it ain't the end. Wounds can heal, even times of friend hurting, living, loving, that's the road I'm running.
Hi, I'm Chris Charlie. Welcome to Hurting, Living, Loving, Healing. In my last episode, I talked about inner peace. And in that video, I talked about my foundation. And the foundation is a checklist of things that I came up with when I came out of rehab the last time, that really is kind of the basics and the foundation for my belief system. It's kind of where everything that I am, or I guess it's really what I'm anchored to. And so it was a response to not feeling tethered to anything. I'm a Christian, so I have a belief system, and growing up as a Christian, the Bible was a confusing place. A lot of thous and these and and so I understood the basics, right? The 10 commandments, and I needed a method to be able to apply that and other things that I had learned to my daily life. And the way that my brain processed things was so situational. So I kind of found myself, and I'm also a people pleaser, so I found myself responding differently to different people based on who I was in front of. And so the foundation are things that are ingrained in me. They're very simple, they're very easy. And it's like when you build a house, you want a firm foundation so that when you build up, you feel strong and steady and supported. And that's exactly what these things are. So I've been to inpatient 5 times, and that's for opiate addiction. I was part of the opiate epidemic. I had my hips replaced when I was 22 years old. And before that, sports medicine doctor here in near Seattle prescribed me pain medication, and they never did an x-ray, an MRI. I was part of, this opiate explosion, and he put me on pain medication. And so 2 years later, I didn't realize I was physically addicted to anything, and I got my hips replaced. And then I tried to get off of them, and I had a real problem with that. And so the opiates, the pills led to heroin, is prescribed methadone for long periods of time. It was the whole gamut, and it was in and out of rehab, and I was so confused. I wanted to get off, but I didn't want to get off. I just wanted to get off because people wanted to get me off. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But the reason why I bring that up is because there was no rule book or playbook. I was just solely going off of feel. I had no tools whatsoever. And I learned some things in inpatient, in rehab, in IOPs, and support groups and these things, but it was all just bits of information. How do I create continuity, and how do I create identity out of all this information? How do I know what's real for me? How do I know when to use it? So when I was using, I got away from a lot of the things that made me happy. And there was a point in my life when I wanted to be a stand-up comic, and everything was about making people laugh. I was a class clown, that kind of thing. I was so far removed from that person, and I didn't even know what types of things made me laugh. I didn't know what made me happy. I didn't know, because the drugs had filled that gap. It had filled the gap of happiness, contentment. It was just this, synthetic replacer of all good things in my life: spiritual, emotional, mental, physical. And I was functioning. I had a job, different jobs. I got married. I had I had different girlfriends during active addiction, and this lasted for, on and off for 20 years. So I had to take on more responsibilities. I still very much felt like a kid inside. There's a lot of emotional growth that was stunted. People say in addiction that our emotional age is the time that we start using. So for me, it's like 15 years old. So I'm a 15-year-old. That's a really interesting thing to think about. And I think that addiction is not the only thing that does this. I think trauma does this. I think overwhelming negativity can do this. I think social media can do this. I think video games can do this. I think there's a lot of things that, when out of balance, can supplant natural growth. That's just my opinion. So when I would be in situations, I was constantly second guessing myself, constantly second guessing something that I said or something that I did. It was I had so much internal struggle and turmoil because I didn't have my feet firmly planted anywhere. And it's like, if you're floating around in space, your compass just spins. At least that's the way I picture it. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe if you're floating around in space, it tells you where north is. But I feel like it doesn't, because you don't have a true north. There's no magnet. There's no dirt under your feet. And so that's what this provided for me. And so how it happened was, I had to get really honest with myself. And every other time that I had gone to inpatient, I told myself and everyone around me, I want to get clean. Was that true? In my heart of hearts, it wasn't true, because I was still very much addicted, and the drugs had such a hold of me that it was my best friend. It was my girlfriend. It was my parents. It was, it had taken place, and I was willing to compromise anything to continue that relationship that I had with my drug. So when I went into rehab, I got really honest with myself, and I said, I can't honestly say that I want to get clean. And there's so many isms and ideas and ways to get clean, and this is the right way. This is the right way. And people always said you have to want it, and I could never really honestly say, oh yeah, I really want to be clean, because the drugs had provided me with so much, even though it was fake and even though it destroyed my life. My brain didn't have the wiring to honestly be able to tell myself that I wanted to get off. So instead, I just said, I want to be clean. I want to be clean. And so that's the attitude that I went in with January 30th, 2020. So when I got out, I went into sober living, and I was there for a year and a half. Like, they pretty much had to kick me out because I would have stayed there forever. I really liked it, and I had a lot of friends, and it was really, for me personally, it was a terrible time, and it was a really good time. It was really when my divorce was happening, and on the one hand, when my wife divorced me, I felt like I was losing everything. It was my they were my people. They were my family. I had spent more time with this family than I did my own family. And my kids, my brain was telling me that my kids were gone. My counselor explained it like it would be the equivalent of my kids being kidnapped. And of course, I knew that that wasn't the case, but that's just how I was feeling. And so when I got out of rehab, I spent a lot of time listening to the voice in my head to make friends with it, because for so long I was drowning out the voice in my head with drugs, and that voice was telling me that I was a piece of shit. It was telling me that I was worthless. It was telling me everything that other people thought of me, right? And I had this thing, I called it my dump truck. It was like, just put it in there because I'm guilty. If it's somebody's fault, it's my fault. And I take ownership and responsibility for all that. And there were things that weren't my fault, that weren't my responsibility, but I'd put them in there anyways. So when I got out of rehab, I listened to my inner voice so I could learn to make friends with it, or just tolerate it, or just sit with it peacefully. And it took a while, because my inner dialogue was so conditioned to be so hateful towards me that I had an emotional and mental breakdown about 3 months before that, where I couldn't be in my own skin. I didn't know how to be in my own skin. I broke. So I had to put that all back together, and it's those moments are what that moment for me was the absolute worst moment. This is where the suicidal ideation comes in. This is where that thinking that the world and I would be better off without me. And so I uh, learned to be able to tolerate myself. And that was the beginning of the starting point. And so I'm in sober living and I'm slowly putting pieces back together. I'm in no hurry. And so I didn't have a job at the time. I was on unemployment and I had a lot of support and I had lots of love from my parents and my friends and my kids. And so I realized one day, it hit me like a ton of bricks that I didn't know anything. I was 40 years old and I realized I didn't know anything. Now, I knew 2 plus 2 and I knew my name was Chris, but in large part, I had been making it up as I went along, and I would backfill stories with assumptions, and I would tell people, "Did you hear about this?" And I had no I didn't know if what I was telling them was even true. I just heard it somewhere, and, like, this was my life, and I realized that it was more of, like, these silos and clips rather than something that had any real continuity, and so that was both terrifying and liberating because it gave me an opportunity to start something new. So I told myself I need to figure out who I am. I need to start somewhere. So the first thing that occurred to me was my love for my kids. Love. The first word that came into my brain was love. I know love is real. It was the most powerful thing that ever happened to me was when I saw my first baby being born. So love is real. I know I love my kids. My kids love me. Okay, that's good. God. God loves me. I love God. Okay, put that under my feet. My parents. My parents love me. I love my parents. Okay, I can count on that one. My best friend loves me. I love him. I've known him since I was 2. That's an unconditional source of so much goodness. Great. Put that under my feet. My friend group. I've known a lot of my friends for a really long time. They love me. I love them. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Physical. What do I want to do? Do I want to be in good shape? Do I want to be in great shape? Do I want to be athletic? I played basketball growing up. There were times when I was pretty fit. I was never like super jacked. I was pretty athletic, but athletic enough to have fun and maintain. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to exercise. I don't want to overdo anything. I don't want to feel shameful or guilty if I don't exercise one day. So yeah, exercise, physical fitness, good. Diet. I want to eat healthy. I want to eat good foods, not a lot of junk food, but I would allow myself sweets and treats. And that, today, that's my Achilles heel is sweets and treats after 10 o'clock. For some reason, that's when my sweet tooth kicks in. And, the way that I didn't look at it this way then, but now I've always been naturally better at diet than I have been exercise. I'm pretty consistently a good eater. And I don't think about it and it's not boastful. That's just how my brain is programmed. For whatever reason, during the day, I like to eat things that are healthy. I think because it makes me feel better. For a while, I was in the construction industry and we ate crap every day and I felt terrible. And so I think just naturally, I just gravitated towards better food. And so, like, did I need to create all these rules and regulations and restrictions around food because I'm naturally better at that? It's like, I didn't think so. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you're naturally really responsible and disciplined about getting up out of bed, then you don't have to harp on those things if they come naturally to you. Enjoy that they come naturally to you. So, um, let's go back. God, love, kids, love, family, love, friends, love, physical fitness, eating. Um, and from there, and then of course I had my support system. I created this support group from guys that were at an inpatient with me, and we did meetings every day for several months. And then it went to, a few times a week, and then once a year. I still keep in contact with a few of those guys, and I had a ton of support at the house. So support system, absolutely. I got a sponsor. Actually, I had one from before, an AA sponsor. We did the 12 steps. And so I created this foundation that was wholly mine. Now, another part of that piece was that prior, so many people had so many opinions and ideas about what I needed to do for my own recovery. And this last time, I didn't want to come out to face a whole bunch of people telling me what I need to do for myself. And I know that they did that out of love. I know that 100%. But it was just time for me to take that back. When people saw me, they thought they needed to tell me what to do. That's the kind of energy that I was putting out in this world. So I had a good discharge plan. I went to my parents and I said, "Look, guys, I love you. And thank you for always being there for me. And you will always have 100% of the parent pie. Mom, you always get 100% of the mom pie. Dad, you always get 100% of the dad pie. But the recovery pie is 100% mine. And you can ask me about it. And maybe in the beginning, I'll tell you exactly what's going on every day. And just because I think that's fair, but it's also my choice to not tell you. But I got it. And I thought that maybe that was going to worry them because I was uninviting them to the tea party. But actually, it did just the opposite. They were like, thank God, finally, you know? And those are those moments where it's like, why didn't I think of this earlier? Why didn't I have this perspective earlier? Well, it comes when it comes. And so from there, it was about, it was now I didn't feel like I was floating around in space with a spinning compass. Now, even though it was super simple, I had my own belief system. And it's probably a lot like 90% of the people in this world's belief system, or maybe countries. But, I mean, family, love, faith, love, eat right, exercise, do something for my mental health. That might have been the one that's, more unique. And then I do find that giving myself some fallback parameters. Other people might be motivated differently, I need to tell myself that I need to work out every day. And if I don't, I'll feel guilty. That's just me. Great. For me, in the very beginning, I think I gave myself 4 days of the week. That was my goal, to work out 4 days of the week. And I had Sundays to do anything I wanted. If I wanted to sleep all day, if I wanted to skip rope all day, if I wanted to go fishing all day, if I want, whatever the case may be, play with my dog all day, I could do that 100% guilt free. And that was a really good thing for me in the very beginning because it gave me something to look forward to throughout the week. And I was so riddled with guilt. And so almost I looked forward almost more to just not feeling guilty in hindsight. And actually, I've never thought of that before, but looking back on it, I remember just thinking, this is my day that I'm not going to feel guilty. So that was an important day for me. And then this was where the rubber really met the road in terms of my perspective on mental health and recovery and making it my own, because I had done so many different things and tried so many different ways and had people tell me that if I'm doing this but not this, then I'm sober, or I'm not sober, or if I got to do it this way or I'll relapse, or I have to do it that way, or whatever you know, there's a million different cliches and things that are sayings that you could wallpaper this room with, and a lot of them are great. I mean, there's and if they're helping, they're great. So I just had to, with all the information out there, I just had to pull what made sense to me. Take what works, leave the rest. So my perspective about addiction and recovery changed from being like I was the pinball in a pinball machine. And it was like, you know, you need to do this, boing, like, oh no, don't do that, doing, you're gonna, if you do this, this is gonna happen, boing, it's just like, oh my gosh. To now was about information. So I looked at it like, first of all, I needed to stop taking things personally. I would get so defensive when somebody would try to give me information, and it would be like, why don't you get up earlier, dude? Like, what are you telling me for? Why don't you make your bed every day? It was just, I didn't take that, I didn't take that criticism well. So I needed to get over myself and learn how to take some criticism, some constructive criticism, and about that time I read a book called The Four Agreements, and it's an amazing book. And essentially it's four very simple rules to live by. Be impeccable with your word. Don't lie. Don't take things personally. Don't make any assumptions. And always do your best. Always do your best. So those are pretty great words to live by. Don't take things personally. Be impeccable with your word. Don't make any assumptions, and always do your best. And that made so much sense to me in that time that it kind of started this conquest where I looked at my mental health, my mind, and my recovery like I would fixing my bike. It was like, if I'm going to be working on something, I might as well be working on me. I always love to build radio controlled cars and take things apart and put them back together. And I love fixing things for people. And so I looked at it like that, like, oh, you mean I can pull this lever over here and this will happen? Or I can do this thing over here and this will happen? Or I can really, like, if I stand up tall and say, Chris is amazing 20 times, I'll actually feel better? Like, there's no way. And then I started doing these things. And I have this friend of mine who's also in recovery who I've known forever. We used to party together. And I'd love to have him on one day. He's a great, great dude. But he used to not hate, but he just didn't, recovery wasn't for him. Like any type of organized recovery wasn't for him. And he started doing the AA thing. And I started hearing these cliches, these sayings come out of his mouth. And I was like, no way. I cannot believe that you are actually using these phrases. And he's like, dude, I love the woo woo. I love the woo woo. So embrace embrace the woo woo. I love it too. And there was a time when um I was in inpatient, but in IOP, intensive outpatient actually, but it was still in the facility at the building, and we got our phones back. And my friend and I kept sending each other these great motivational blurbs. And it was like, if you lose somebody but gain yourself, you're the winner. If you, whatever, those little motivational blurbs. And it was just enough to connect the dots throughout the day so that it was something for me from somebody who was thinking about me. And sometimes they were so profound in those moments, and I was so open to it that my mind was just eating it up. And so we'd send these things to each other and just be like, dude, that one just totally hit home. It was, and it was so I try to keep my mind in this space where I'm not shutting myself off to good possible change. The other side to that, though, is sticking to what works. Sometimes I'm such in this like excited to get new information and change that I'll be doing something that works great. And then I'll try something new and it doesn't work as good. And so, I have to have the, I guess, peace of mind or wherewithal to go back to whatever works. But yeah, that specifically detaching from some of the work so that I could look at it objectively really helped my perspective. So that if I talked about something that was about me that could have been negative, I didn't feel like somebody was like I didn't get defensive. And I got to this point where I'd walk around and ask my housemates, "Hey, what do I need to change about myself? Like, what do you see?" And one guy told me I was too loud, that I can be overpowering with my voice, like volume. And so that was good feedback. And another one told me I can be really spontaneous. Like I can start and stop things and not see them through. And I know that about myself. And but it was nice to hear that from people because they took the time to think about something that was real and honest about myself. And then I had the decision if I wanted to do anything about it. And I still talk loud to this day. So I guess, but now I do have different volumes. I did take that one to heart because I was always just kind of like a bullhorn most of the time. Uh, so the other piece of this was real important was to stay true to the person that I was becoming by being as present as I could. I had so much in my rearview mirror. And I heard somebody say once, if you're living in the past, you're depressed. If you're living in the future, you're anxious. So you might as well be in the present. I think Kung Fu Panda had something about living in the present. Today is a gift. So stay in the present because today is a gift. Something like that. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. Love Kung Fu Panda. But I had so much negative in my rearview mirror to process. It was overwhelming the amount of stuff that I needed to process, forgive myself for, find a home for, make peace with. So much, so much. And so I found myself naturally, once the drugs were out of my system, naturally going back and like picking through the bone pile. And it could be paralyzing. And so I had to really just focus on, like, I can't solve it. I can't solve it all in that moment. I was missing out on really cool moments being in my own head about something else. So if we're thinking about the future, we can't do anything about the future. We can set ourselves up for, tomorrow, or, you could put gas in your car so you don't run out. Of course, all those types of things. You can put some money in the bank so you have some later, but we can influence things. However, ruminating on them to the point of negative, thinking about all the negative outcomes, all the possibilities, can be paralyzing. And thinking about all the negative things that you've done can be paralyzing. And, we live in this culture that wants to punish, and they want to punish whatever the they is. I don't want to punish anybody, so I guess I'm not part of the they, but our culture loves to punish. It loves a good comeback story too, but there are tribes. Look this up, don't take my word for it. I believe some of the Inuit tribes, some of the Native American tribes, and Aboriginal tribes, they don't have punishment the way that we do. They teach through community. They don't have corporal punishment, and it's not this like negative, make you pay over and over. I think there was one I read where maybe I should do a episode on this, where you stand up in front of the community, you say what you did, you say you're sorry, and then it's never to be spoken about ever again. So the reason why I say that is because society wants to punish us hard enough. So I was really good at punishing myself and staying punished. I was my own worst enemy. And I think some people don't feel like us like we're like on the party train, right? Like we're checked out. We don't feel anything. We just want to serve ourselves. We are having like a nonstop party. To us, it doesn't feel that way. And so it feels like a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of hurt and a lot of all those things. And I called it my wake of destruction, and it was vast and wide and deep. And does it help for me to stay in that place? Does that make it better for my kids and the people around me? Or is it better if I find forgiveness, learn from those things, hopefully stop any generational negative behaviors, traumas, things like that, and then put my best foot forward? I thought that some version of the latter was the best. So that's my foundation. And to this day, it's very much the same. And it's a checklist because when I'm feeling a little off, when I'm feeling like I'm a little depressed, or, something isn't right, if I go to my checklist and I'm like, oh, haven't worked out in 4 days, it's usually that, you know, haven't gone to church in a month, didn't read, didn't do my Bible app for 2 weeks, haven't been to support group. I still do support groups, do them online a lot. And if I don't go to them in 2 weeks, I start to feel heavy and burdened and full, full, like I need, like it's got to go somewhere. So it's a checklist. It's my foundation. It starts with love. It ends with love. And, hey, one thing is that at the end of the day, we only have time. That's our real currency. So thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm Chris Charlie, and this is Hurting, Living, Loving, Healing.
Sometimes you gotta do it hurt. You gotta do it scared. You gotta find